This is my 4-inch quad, and it had a bit of a crash. The beeper's fallen off. The power wires came off the PCB here, and it currently has a Seriously Racing Pro F3 and I believe a 30 amp 4-in-1. And so we're gonna do some upgrades. We're gonna take this all apart, take the top off, take the top two off. We are going to replace the SP F3 with an Omnibus F4. We'll take out this middle board and we're gonna slam this down and make it look a bit nicer and replace this camera. This camera's pretty much dead, it's all scratched up. So we have a better camera to put in there, and so it should look pretty good. So we have 20mm standoffs, some yellow 14 gauge wire, some yellow 22 gauge wire, an FR Sky XM receiver, Omnibus F4, a CADX Turbo Micro F1 camera, an SQ12 camera. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the teardown, but let's start with the antenna. Okay, so the antenna is off. We will remove the little connector there next. We got that off. Looks nice and clean. Let's pop the top off and see what's going on underneath. Alright, we got that open. Let's go ahead and take the camera out along with the receiver. So the next step on the teardown will be to remove the 4 screws on the flight controller and pop that off. Okay, so we've got the flight controller off. Now we just have some power wires and the ESC wires. Just desolder those. Okay, got the flight controller off. Next step would be to take the PDB out and desolder the power and the camera, and then remove the camera. Okay, so we have all the electronics out: the camera, PCB, the receiver, and the VTX. So I'm just going to take all those and set them aside for now. Let's clean up here. We don't need all these extra pieces. Let's get rid of those first. Well, before we start the upgrade, I'm just going to go ahead and take these standoffs off. It's going to be easier to work on. First thing we need to do is wire up the Omnibus flight controller facing the correct direction. So we just put the board on up there upside down, and that will allow us to tin the pads for all the components that we need. So let's do that now. So we'll start with the PWM. PWM pad there. I'll just do one on camera and then the rest I'll just do with magic. So just put it on there. And that should be good. Alright, one done. Okay, so that's the 4 PWM. Next we'll do the camera, video input, and video output. So that's these 6 here. Okay, so that's 6 done. Okay, I've quickly turned the board over so we can quickly solder up the pads on this side. These 3 here, these are going to be the S-Bus pads. So we'll just do those real quick. Okay, so that's the S-Bus pads. So there is a little, 3 little pads here. The top 2, you bridge those for PPM. Bottom 2, you bridge those for S-Bus. So we'll quickly bridge those. for S-Bus. Okay, so we have bridge now for S-Bus. Okay, so here we have ground and VBAT. The next step will be to bridge the RAM pins, which are these two of these three here, for the appropriate camera voltage. So we'll just do a quick check on the camera. Not sure if you can see that, but it's 5 volts to 40 volts. So no problems with taking the full VBAT. So we will bridge the VBAT pin, which is I believe this corner one, with the center pin, which I believe is the ground. Okay, so I believe we have all the soldering done. So we've got the RAM, power, the camera, power and ground ESC connectors, and we have S-Bus here. It looks like these wires here are just too short in order to reach the solder pins. So I have a replacement cable here. I am going to pop out the power cable because our 4-in-1 does not supply 5 volt. So we'll pop that out and we'll basically cut one end off and then we'll solder that up. So it's pretty easy to pop one of the wires out. I just use X-Acto knife or a box cutter, as some people call it. There's these little tabs. So you just lift up the tab on the wire you want to pull out, give it a little twist so it disconnects, and a pull. There we go. And then just push the tab back forwards, and then we'll just chop this side off. And now we have a new connector. Plug the new connector in. There we go. Alright, so I will tin these wires up. Okay, so I've tinned the wires, and now I will solder up. Now it doesn't really matter which order you put them in. Alright, so we have all 4 motor wires on there and the ground. So if we just pick that up, pop that off for now. There we go, so we'll set that aside. Now I'm going to change this red wire to a yellow wire. So I'll just quickly desolder this red connector here. There we go. I'll leave that with a nice bead on it. Perfect. Just cut this off. There we go. And I can probably just peel that off. Yeah, that's better. There we go. Perfect. Just let that cool a bit. Otherwise it's gonna melt the plastic. Usually what I do is I just wet the tip. That'll help the heat disperse through the wire. Put it along the back. And then just drag the solder across the front. Give it a little dab of solder first. And it'll help heat up the joints on both sides. Just like that. Perfect. So same as before, we'll put a little bit of solder here and we'll just put that in behind. There we go. Just slide that right on there. And I use my trusty heat gun here. Don't press too hard, just let the heat do the job. There we go. Perfect. Not touching anything. Okay. So next step is we will put the flight controller will end up going on like this. So we just need to solder in the camera and the VTX. Alright, so that's going to go up on there. I'll give it a little bit extra and we'll just run it to there. There we go. And we'll just take a little bit of the coating off. Okay, I'll solder these up and we'll be right back. Okay, we have the camera soldered in. So as you can see, we've got the video, the power, and the ground. So we have the Eachine VTX03, and so I've got a pigtail in here with the connector. Okay, so I've got the VTX wired up. I removed the 2 extra wires because that's for powering the camera. We don't need those since we're powering the camera directly from the flight controller. So we have that. We'll figure out where to mount it later. The next step will be to mount the receiver. Okay, so we've soldered on this little connector for the receiver. Next step will be to tin up the connectors on the receiver itself. Perfect. I made it a little bigger because if I wanted to put glue in there for any given reason, we could do that, but there we go. So let's quickly plug this guy in. We don't want to forget about that. Oh, I made him out the camera. Right. Give everything a little twist. Twist. Give everything a nice little twist. It just helps to make sure the wires on the bottom are all nicely tucked away. And they're not going to go all random directions and get themselves in trouble. There. Perfect. Okay, so I've got some tape here. Some nice cushy double-sided tape. What we'll do is we'll just tuck this in here first like this. And we'll see if we can't get this to sit right up on top. And voila, there we go. Let's see if we can get the camera mounted. I mounted the camera, but it's a little bit shaky. I can add some glue in there, I think, to reinforce that later. I'll just put the 2 standoffs in the back. That'll go on like that. And that should sit right around everything like that. Beautiful. There, should be perfect. And that will allow us to just pop this out right there. So I will shorten this up, figure out a place for it. I will zap strap that, throw the antenna on there, and we'll get a final look. Alright, so I've finished everything up. I put everything together. Just quick run through of the final things I did here. So basically I hot glued in the camera mount here, and I've used standoff 2M standoff screws to put that in there. The zap strap just didn't, it was just too wobbly, and it's actually quite tight. I just put the glue in there to just for extra security. I zap strapped down the power wire here so it doesn't wiggle around and break loose. I trimmed off the camera controller wire and just ran it down over here. It's pretty secure there. I'm not sure you can see that, but it's just right there. I attached this SQ12, just using zap straps and this cheap mount. What else? Oh, I put the antenna up here. So it's basically just a zap strap along that, and then I just put a shrink sleeve over top, give it a little bit of upward angle so that it kind of points upwards when I'm flying forwards. And the same thing, I put a yellow shrink sleeve over this cheap antenna I have. I'm going to replace this at some point, but for now this is what I have, so I just put a little yellow thing on there. So I've got a nice little yellow scheme going on there. It's not too bad. I did have to make a couple fixes. When I plugged the battery in, nothing happened. And the reason for that was because I ran the power wire to the wrong pad on the flight controller. I had it off by 1, so it was, yeah, so I just quickly fixed that up and everything was fine. Yeah, so it's powers on. I've got it paired to my controller and should be good. Yeah, so hopefully we'll do a maiden flight soon. But before I do that, I will set up the beta flight stuff, and I think I'll probably do that in a separate video because this one's already too long. If anybody's watched this long, then I super appreciate it. Anyways, yeah, I had fun building this quad, and I'm sure I'll have even more fun crashing it again. So look forward to that in the videos to come. Alright, thanks for tuning in.